Well, I contend that it's not a valid comparison from the point of view of African Americans were not immigrants to these shores. My ancestors were brought here as enslaved people, stolen from their country, in chains, treated as inhumans, actually was considered under the Constitution as property, against the law to be educated, against the law to know how to read, against the law if you were caught trying to teach us how to read. No other group of people coming to this country has come under those conditions. And for that reason alone, it was 1954 before the Brown versus Board of Education decision was rendered that outlawed separate and unequal. Not that it was outlawed, however. It took 10 more years for the Civil Rights Act of '64 before states, especially southern states, began to act even though the '54 law said with all due speed. And so there has been a tremendous need to catch up, a tremendous need of denial of education, with education being directly related to economics, to human endeavor in general. No other group has been denied their personhood, has been denied their religion, names stripped away, language taken, and essentially treated as property and animals. No other group can make that comparison. And it's for that reason that I contend that yes, other immigrant groups have come to these shores. They came voluntarily, first of all, and didn't come in shackles and chains, and were helped along, protected with rights in this country. My group was not.
How do you think
Yes, a lot of time has passed, but we're still a discriminatory country. We're still a country of inequity. We're still a country of bigotry and prejudices. And the color of one's skin has a lot to do with who is subjected to those kinds of indifferences. So while time has passed, actually not very much time has passed. We're talking about a few decades. So when you are coming from behind the line to start with, and when you've been continuously subjected to indifferences, the opportunities have not been there, the access has not been there equally in amounts that would have allowed some equalizing and some equilibrium of groups. And one has to understand the history of this country, the past history and the current activities of this country. As recently as this past election, African Americans had to fight for the right to vote. Every 10 years, the Voting Rights Act is renewed in Congress. People don't realize that something as basic as the right to vote is renewed every 10 years for black folk. And so we have not reached that level of equality that is the rhetoric of this nation. And until we do, we find a lot of manifestations in our school system, especially our public education system, such that access and opportunity is not there in equal terms. We talk about the disproportionality in discipline, but we also peel back the data and we look at the disproportionality of who's in special education, the disproportionality of who's not in highly capable, gifted, and advanced placement courses, the disproportionality of who's dropping out, who's not graduating, who's not going to college, the disproportionality of who's incarcerated. And we don't make a correlation between the culture of this country, the inequities of this country, but it's easier to blame the victim than it is to look at the practices of the country that results in the kind of manifestations we look at. Well, the reform movement, as we call it, trying to make changes in education, And I certainly have been a steadfast advocate for whatever opportunity that was to call for change. But very little change has been made. When we look at our current American public education system, 90 to 95% of it is still as it was, as originally conceived and put into place over 250 years ago. Nothing's changed. We have tinkered around the edge of the box. The status quo is still maintained. When the original system of education was put into place, it never was intended to educate people of color, to educate females, to educate anyone other than white, Protestant, male, upper class people. And our schools today are anything but that. We have become this cornucopia of diversity. And that diversity brings different worldviews, different learning styles, different experiences, different backgrounds. Yet we continue to dispense education as though we are still one homogeneous group of folk of the same belief system, same religious system, same worldview, and that's not the case. So we're in denial that this country has changed. And so much change has happened, but education as an institution has seen the least amount of change of any of our systems. So yes, there's been tinkering, there have been innovations here and there, but for the most part, education has not changed.
What kind of changes would you like to see?
Starting with the reality of who the students in today's schools are. Starting with the reality of the fact that education is not relevant to the average young person today. That contributes to the dropout rate. That contributes to the tune-out rate. That contributes to so much that's going on in school. We start there with who are our students, what are their needs, and what is the world that they are going into, and how can we best equip them to be successful in that world. And there's little going on in our schools that meet that recipe, so to speak. All you have to do is ask any average sophomore, junior in high school, and they'll tell you, you know, what bores them to death, what they wish school did look like, and they're off into high-tech land. And our schools are still dealing with manual kinds of ways of learning. So there's a disconnect between the needs of our students and what our schools are dispensing.